Right now, somewhere in Hollywood, an actor who died years ago is seamlessly delivering lines for a brand new movie.
Which is pretty wild to think about.
It is entirely wild. And meanwhile, across the country, you have a couple with a perfect credit score and a cleared out plot of land, and they are absolutely terrified to sign a mortgage for a physical house that actually exists.
Yeah, we are looking at this really fascinating fracture in how we process our environment right now.
Right.
On one side, you have this overwhelming, heavy physical economy, dictating what we can actually afford to touch and build. And on the other hand, there's this frictionless digital landscape where we are just actively rewriting the rules of space, medicine, and, like you said, mortality.
So welcome to today's deep dive. That bizarre fracture is our entire focus today as we look through a stack of notes titled Digital Ghosts and Economic Shifting Tides.
It's a great title.
It really is. And our mission today is for you, our listener, to figure out how these two extremes are interacting. Because while it seems like we're looking at entirely disconnected worlds like interest rates in one hand and Hollywood AI in the other, this whole stack of sources is fundamentally about a single theme.
Which is control.
Exactly. It's about where we as human beings try to manufacture certainty when the physical world feels just entirely out of our hands.
Right.
So let's start with the physical reality of our wallets and the housing market. For anyone who has been tracking mortgage rates, it has been a brutal multi-year endurance test.
Yeah, absolutely brutal.
But the notes highlight a very specific, tangible shift. The 30-year mortgage rate has finally dropped to 6.38%.
Which represents a significant psychological threshold, honestly, just as much as a financial one.
Yeah.
And it's not just the 30-year fixed rate either. The sources note that 15-year rates and adjustable rate mortgages, the IRMs, are also trending downward.
So there's finally some relief.
Right. But to understand why this is happening, we have to look at the mechanics of the Federal Reserve. Because the Fed doesn't actually set your mortgage rate.
Right. They control the federal funds rate.
Exactly. Which is the interest banks charge each other for overnight loans. When the Fed signals they're going to ease up on that rate, the yield on the 10-year Treasury note typically falls in anticipation.
And mortgage lenders use that 10-year yield as a benchmark.
You got it. So as that pressure eases at the macro level, it cascades down to the consumer level. It creates this rare window of relief for home buyers.
So the math is finally working in the buyer's favor. And the notes show that builders are seeing this math too. Spring is approaching, the weather is clearing up.
The material backlogs are finally steadying out.
Yes. Builders have the lumber on site, they have the labor lined up, and they are ready to break ground. But, and this is the crazy part, the clients are ghosting them.
Yeah, literally disappearing.
Right at the finish line. They're just gone.
And the builder's patience is understandably wearing thin. They've managed to navigate all the supply chain chaos and labor shortages over the last few years.
Just to be stalled by the clients evaporating.
Exactly.
So the sources point to economic jitters and the looming threat of a Middle East conflict as the primary causes for this hesitation. But okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Getting this mortgage rate drop right now is kind of like getting a discount on a roller coaster ticket. But you're too nervous about the storm clouds like the global conflict to actually get on the ride.
That's a really good way to put it.
But I have to push back on the utility of this rate drop. If you have local builders ready to pour concrete and local banks offering cheaper money, does that 6.38% rate even matter if a geopolitical conflict on the other side of the planet is completely paralyzing actual physical investment?
What's fascinating here is that we are seeing a real-time demonstration of a behavioral economics concept. It's known as ambiguity aversion.
Ambiguity aversion. Okay.
Yeah. Humans have a deeply ingrained preference for known risks over unknown risks.
Interesting.
Right. So a 7% mortgage is a painful risk, but it is a known mathematical entity. You can literally put it in a spreadsheet and budget for it.
Right. It's just math.
Exactly. But a looming, undefined global conflict or a broad, vague recession, that is an unknown risk. It represents total ambiguity.
So even though on a microeconomic level, your personal borrowing power just increased.
Right. The spreadsheet says it's time to build, but our psychology does not run on spreadsheets.
We're not built for that.
No, we are evolutionarily programmed to prioritize existential macro-level threats over immediate micro-level rewards.
So even if the conflict is thousands of miles away, our brains process the global headlines as a direct threat to our immediate local safety.
Yeah.
Like, we just hunker down.
We do. When people feel a lack of control over the macro environment, they freeze their microenvironment.
Wow.
They refuse to make massive 30-year financial commitments, completely regardless of the discount they were being offered.
So it illustrates how distant abstract fears can just completely override tangible, immediate mathematical benefits. The physical world feels too unpredictable, so we pull back.
Exactly.
Well, when the physical world feels that paralyzed by uncertainty, it makes sense that we start retreating into spaces where we have absolute control.
Which brings us to the digital side of the notes.
Right. Because if you can't build a physical house, you synthesize a digital one. The sources detail how AI is now actively stepping in to manufacture the spaces we aren't physically building.
We're seeing this heavily in real estate listings, right?
Yes, where AI is being used to digitally stage empty homes.
It is a fascinating application of generative spatial rendering.
Because traditionally, staging a house required a lot of physical friction.
Oh, totally. You had to rent the mid-century modern couch, hire the movers, arrange the lighting, all of it.
But now
Now, an algorithm just analyzes the spatial dimensions of an empty room. It calculates the natural light occlusion from the windows, and then it seamlessly renders high-end furniture right into that space.
it creates a flawless, idealized lifestyle without a single physical object ever crossing the threshold.
Exactly. You look at a listing online, and that gorgeous sunlit living room is literally just code.
Which, in the context of marketing real estate, is a clever parlor trick. It removes the friction. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The notes transition into an area where removing that human friction is profoundly more complicated. Because we aren't just letting AI dress up with our living rooms.
Right.
We are letting it map our bodies. The research highlights the massive deployment of AI in healthcare, specifically in crunching just vast amounts of medical data to find patterns that human doctors miss.
Yeah, the underlying mechanism here is pure computational scale.
So?
Well, a human radiologist, no matter how skilled they are, is limited by biological fatigue, right? And the sheer volume of patients they have to see in a day.
Right, they get tired. They're human.
Exactly. But an AI diagnostic model is trained on millions of historical lung scans and their subsequent health outcomes. Millions! So when it looks at your X-ray, it isn't looking at a picture the way you or I do. It is evaluating a massive matrix of pixels to detect microscopic statistical deviations from a healthy baseline.
So it can spot an anomaly at a pixel level that the human eye literally cannot physically resolve.
Yes.
The end result being healthcare that is theoretically cheaper, infinitely faster, and mathematically more accurate.
Theoretically, yes.
And I understand the statistics, but if my life or death diagnosis comes from an algorithm instead of a human being, I am highly skeptical that I would trust it more than my actual doctor.
That's a very common reaction.
To me, relying entirely on the algorithm feels like flying on a commercial plane with no pilot in the cockpit.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. Like, the airline can show me all the safety statistics. They can explain how the autopilot software makes micro adjustments to the flaps milliseconds faster than human reflexes ever could.
Sure.
But a human pilot shares the liability of the flight. If the plane goes down, they go down with it. A computer carries absolutely no physical or emotional risk.
This raises an important question, though, because the concept of shared risk is really the foundation of human trust.
Yes.
We don't just trust doctors because they spent a decade passing rigorous board exams. We trust them because they carry the ethical and emotional liability of their decisions.
Exactly.
When a human doctor looks at you and delivers a difficult diagnosis, there is a tacit understanding that they comprehend the gravity of those words.
They know what it means for your life.
Right. But the AI diagnostic tool, despite its pixel-perfect accuracy, has zero comprehension of what a cancer diagnosis actually means to a human being. It is entirely disconnected from the emotional consequence of its output.
It's just returning a probability score based on its training data.
Exactly. And this introduces a massive tension into the medical field. The metrics of cheaper and faster are excellent for streamlining an assembly line.
Sure.
But they are highly disruptive when applied to human mortality.
Wow. Yeah.
The technology is forcing us to decide whether we value the flawless apathy of a machine over the flawed but empathetic connection of a human physician.
And that tension is everywhere. We are outsourcing our spatial reality to generative algorithms. We are outsourcing our biological reality to diagnostic probability.
It's all connected.
It is. But the sources show we are pushing this pursuit of digital certainty even further. We are crossing a boundary that goes beyond our physical lifetimes.
The digital ghosts.
Yes. We are looking at Hollywood's creation of digital ghosts.
This is where the synthesis of technology and human identity really reaches a profound new threshold.
It's almost unsettling.
Very, because historically, mortality was the ultimate non-negotiable boundary of a creative career. When an artist passed away, their body of work became a closed loop.
But the notes detail how Hollywood is using AI to bypass that boundary entirely.
Yeah.
The specific example in our sources is Val Kilmer. A studio is utilizing an AI doppelganger, a digital twin, to allow him to star posthumously in a new film.
It's incredible tech.
It is. And the industry justification is essentially, why let mortality stop a good performance?
Right.
But a crucial detail, the notes point out, is that Kilmer's children actually approved this move, bringing legal and familial consent into the equation.
Which is important. But the mechanics of how this is achieved are just staggering.
How does it actually work?
Well, the studio isn't just pasting old footage together like they used to. They feed decades of an actor's previous performances into a neural network.
Decades of it.
Yeah. And the AI maps thousands of facial landmarks and microexpressions while synthesizing the vocal cadence and phonemes from thousands of hours of audio.
Oh, well.
So it essentially builds a predictive model of how that specific human being would react, speak, and move in a completely new, unrecorded scenario.
So what does this all mean? Because, it feels like high-tech digital taxidermy to me.
Digital taxidermy, wow.
Yeah, I recognize that the family gave their consent, which provides a necessary legal framework so it isn't like a hostile theft of someone's likeness.
Right, it's authorized.
But it feels fundamentally different than watching a classic movie. When you watch an old film, you are watching a paused moment of reality. You're watching a capture of a real human being making real choices at a specific moment in time.
Right.
But this generative digital twin feels like reality isn't being paused. It is being actively overwritten. If your digital ghost can just keep booking gigs, does mortality even mean anything in the context of legacy?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are looking at a collision between the aesthetic of a legacy and the authenticity of art.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, the consent of the estate ensures the legacy is protected legally, right? But it forces us to interrogate what a performance actually is at its core.
Right.
If we break down what acting is mechanically, is it just the sequential firing of facial muscles and the modulation of vocal cords designed to elicit a specific emotional response from the viewer?
Because if it is just mechanics, then the algorithm can absolutely replicate it.
It can replicate it flawlessly. But if we believe that a performance is inherently tied to the human soul,
which I think most of us do.
Right, that it is fueled by an actor's lived experience, their hidden joys, their personal traumas bleeding through the screen to create a moment of genuine connection, then a predictive model can never achieve it.
Never.
The digital twin can perfectly mimic the visual and auditory output, but the origin of the emotion is hollow. It is simulating a human connection without a human being present.
Which forces the audience to confront what they're actually paying for. Are we buying a ticket just to see the familiar aesthetic illusion of Val Kilmer? Or are we seeking the human connection of knowing a real person is expressing something true?
It challenges the very definition of creativity. When the origin of the art is a mathematical probability based on past data rather than a spontaneous human choice, the relationship between the creator and the audience is permanently altered.
Man, we have covered an incredibly strange landscape today through these notes.
It really is a lot to take in.
Just to quickly recap the journey we've taken. We started grounded in the physical world, looking at the mechanics of the Federal Reserve dropping mortgage rates.
Right.
Only to realize that all the favorable math in the world cannot overcome the psychological paralysis caused by global geopolitical fears.
Ambiguity aversion.
Exactly. And from that paralysis, we moved into the digital spaces where we are manufacturing the control we lack in reality. We explore the uncanny perfection of AI staging our real estate, the tension of relying on algorithms to diagnose our bodies without sharing our physical risks, and finally, the digital taxidermy of Hollywood resurrecting actors to give posthumous performances.
It is a landscape that demands a completely new framework for how we assign value, which brings the focus directly to you listening to this right now. We have outlined the macroeconomic fears, the algorithmic efficiencies, and the digital legacies. But the practical application of this knowledge is entirely about your own boundaries.
Your personal limits.
Exactly. How are you going to navigate a reality where your financial decisions are heavily paralyzed by broad global anxieties, while your physical environment, your medical care, and your entertainment are increasingly synthesized by artificial intelligence?
It's a tough balance.
Where do you draw the line between accepting the efficiency of the math and demanding the friction of the human element?
It feels like a line we are all going to have to draw much sooner than we anticipated.
Definitely. And I want to leave you with one final thought to consider as you process all of this.
Lay it on us.
We are rapidly moving past the point of technological novelty. If an AI can perfectly render a mid-century couch to make an empty house feel like a home,
Yeah.
if it can analyze a pixel matrix to spot a microscopic disease faster than a human radiologist,
Yeah.
and if it can flawlessly simulate the emotional nuance of an actor long after they have passed away,
Right.
at what point does the human touch transition from being the expected standard to being a rare, highly sought-after commodity?
Oh, wow. That completely flips the paradigm.
In a future where digital perfection is cheap and infinite, will you find yourself actively seeking out and paying a premium just for the absolute guarantee that a real, flawed, breathing human being was involved in your care, your art, or your home?
That's entirely possible.
Will the phrase 100% human-made become the ultimate luxury label?
That is such a wild thought to leave on. We used to just want the most efficient answer.
Yeah.
But maybe, in a world filling up with digital ghosts, the ultimate luxury will simply be the assurance that the hand pointing at the X-ray or the face looking back from the screen is actually real.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for diving in with us today. We'll see you on the next deep dive.